You are Locked On Clippers Postcast, part of Locked On Los Angeles on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, how's it going? I've been covering sports in LA for ESPN Radio and NBC Sports Radio dating back to 2007. Thought the Clippers looked pretty good in that loss a couple of nights ago in spite of no Kawhi and no Paul George. Thought they played really well for four quarters. It was just a fun game. And, even though they lost, it still kind of felt like, hey, could have been worse. They could have gotten spanked, could have got embarrassed like they did tonight, but they battled. So they came out tonight in the first quarter against the T-Wolves playing really solid. They were a 5.5 point underdog. Oh, real quick, need to tell you the sponsor of tonight's show is our friends at Nissan. This episode brought to you by Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventures could be around the next corner? Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or the Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Check them all out today at nissanusa.com. Anyway, back to this disaster of a game. Just about to go final. Yes, 118-100 Timberwolves. Clippers came in as a 5.5 point favorites, and the Timberwolves were riding a 2-game losing streak. Last time they played in Minnesota, Clippers got a win in an ugly game where James Harden had just 4 points. Paul George had 15, and it was all about Kawhi Leonard in that game with 32 points. So kind of the opposite tonight. Kawhi Leonard was a big part of this game because he played for about a half of the first quarter and then left with 6 points. Back spasms. They called it something more fancy, like a thoracic event. Why can't they just say back spasms? Anyway, I thought that was weird because he got into street clothes and then left the arena, reportedly. I've been at many, many games at crypto.com, then Staples Center, where I've seen guys, all kinds of different dudes on the sidelines in the middle of the game with like heating pads. I'm trying to remember who the guy was. It was on the Clippers, I want to say. In the Chris Paul era, Doc Rivers era, there was a guy that was notorious for, in the middle of the game, just wrapping himself from head to toe, have a heating pad around his back. He had heat on his thighs and calves, and then he would go back in the game. So this was his in-game routine when he was on the bench. He did it every night. It worked for him. I feel like Kobe did that a lot. There were times where Kobe would sit on the floor rather than on the bench to deal with his ailing parts. I believe he had a back issue as well. A lot of these guys do. It's very typical. So I guess Kawhi was having spasms early before the game and just tried to battle through it. I made a comment that Kawhi looked really good and comfortable weaving through traffic in the lane, very smooth early in the game. Some of the announcers disagreed with me. They said they thought he looked awkward and uncomfortable. So I don't know. What I saw early on in his first 6 points, he seemed pretty Kawhi Leonard-like. So to hear that he left with back spasms is, of course, very scary for the Clippers because Kawhi Leonard is one of those guys that, when something starts to go wrong, it can go wrong very badly and in a hurry. And before you know it, he's down for 2 weeks and then out for the rest of the season, which would be disastrous for the Clippers. He's been great all season long, hasn't had any major issues, knock on wood. Let's hope this isn't one of them. Let's hope this is just a minor blip on the radar screen and they were just being cautious. I thought the energy in the first quarter seemed like this game meant a lot to them. They went on a 25-10 run during a 7-0 run. Zoo was playing well, nice footwork, looking very smooth. Minnesota hit just 1-3 in the first. Now I'm looking at that and I say, is that because Clippers were playing good defense on the perimeter? Something we've discussed a lot here. Or were they just not making threes? I think it was a little of both, but more than anything, I think you could credit that 1-3 to, they were like 1 of 7. It wasn't like they took a whole bunch, because by the end of the night, they had it dialed from beyond the arc. 12 of 33, 36%. I thought it would be higher because Mike Conley had 5 threes, and so did Alexander off the bench. So things were going well. Now, do we say, Kawhi leaves and the air is let out of the building? I mean, that's a fair assumption to make. Clippers shot 55% from the floor in the first quarter, 66% from beyond the arc. So they were just playing well. They had the energy. They had the attitude. They were closing out. They finished with 11 threes, 36%. So Minnesota only had one more three. Clippers finished with 47% from the floor on the night, 84% from the free throw line. But the same situations seemed to trouble them. A lot of the same issues were causing them to fall behind, to blow this huge lead once again. The epidemic of blowing a huge lead is, as far as I'm concerned, embarrassing and unforgivable. If they lost this game by 2 or 4, I would have a completely different attitude. But you have a 22-point lead, and yeah, I know Kawhi left early, but Paul George was playing pretty well. He didn't have a terrible night. They were playing well. So where's the fight? Show me some energy. Rally around the fact that Kawhi is out of the game. Win one for the Gipper. All right, we'll get into some of the specifics about the things that once again caused the Clippers problems, caused them to let a 22-point lead slip through their fingertips and get smacked in the face by the Timberwolves at crypto.com, 118-100. Thank you for joining me here on the Locked On Sports LA YouTube channel and listening on the Locked On Clippers podcast feed. All right, tonight's show also brought to you by our friends at BetterHelp. I did some counseling, a few months ago, and I was like, I did it online, and I was like, was that BetterHelp? And then I got an email a couple of days ago going, hey, coming back to BetterHelp? And I'm like, maybe, I might, I don't know. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was very helpful, very productive, and so forth. So I know a lot of times people have issues, things that are causing them trouble, and they think, well, I'm going to change everything in my life. I'm going to quit drinking and I'm going to quit smoking. And although those are probably good things to do, you don't always need to make such drastic changes to your life. Maybe a better way of looking at it would be to find out what's working well for you and kind of explore those things and build on those things rather than like the New Year's resolution type of things that don't always stick. As I said, I've done therapy a couple of times and they've been very helpful, kind of focusing on the things that are a problem and giving me a solution to those problems, like real tools to say, all right, this is how we're going to handle these specific situations. And that works for me. Might be completely different for you, but I like to be able to go into a situation with some tools that say, all right, this is how I'm going to approach this issue that causes me frustration. So if you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited for your schedule. Celebrate the progress you have already made. Visit betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. All right, Clippers fall 118-100 and blow a 22-point lead. They have now lost back-to-back games. Some of the things that really went south for them in the later part of the second quarter and third quarter, and then the fourth quarter, I have almost no notes at all because there was just nothing going on. I was about ready to start the postcast in the middle of the fourth quarter. We usually, when it's a blowout, we'll start with a couple of minutes to go. I was like, screw it, I'm starting at the 8-minute mark. This game is over and I'm mad. Oh, that was just atrocious. There was no fight at all. The third quarter was one of the worst quarters of basketball I've seen them play. They were giving up transition points to Minnesota like candy on Halloween. They were turning the ball over. They were throwing the ball out of bounds like 6-year-olds do. I mean, James Harden, I've said it on the postcast at least a half a dozen times. James Harden has that penetrate to the left wing and hook it across the court to the guy in the corner. Pass mastered. He was throwing it. He threw it about 6 feet over Norm Powell's head. Maybe it was Terrence Mann. Whoever was in the corner could not elevate enough to get that ball. And then they flashed to Ty Lue, and Ty Lue is sitting there with this look on his face like, what in the hell was that? I mean, it was just embarrassing. And it was so bad, even James Harden, who's a pretty proud guy, when he makes a mistake, he kind of just has this blank look on his face and gets back to playing. That pass was so bad, he even was like, my bad. He raised his hand and kind of apologized to everybody, his teammates, the fans, his coach. I don't know, but he chucked it so far out of bounds. And then there was another one where Zoo did something very similar. They had 3 turnovers in a row where they looked so sloppy, like they haven't played together. It was like the first game after the All-Star break. Minnesota went on a 10-0 run. And then I started thinking, all right, we're still in it. It's not over yet. They were down 6 at that point, maybe 8. And they started to get back into it a little bit. Do they have any fight? Please show me that you have a little bit of fight and get back into this game. Because I don't know that I've seen that. What we've seen from the Clippers is 2 very consistent things of late. They start strong, finish weak, or start weak and finish strong, right? But starting strong and then letting it slip and then hanging around and getting back into the game, we haven't seen that, right? Again, what we saw tonight is pretty much typical. They get a lead, they blow the lead, and then they just cash in their chips and go to the bar. We're done. That's it. We're out. See you in the morning. I mean, that's what they're doing. And again, I appreciate the comment from one of our viewers. They don't really care about these games all that much. They just want to get to the postseason, and then they'll have a different attitude and energy. Okay, that's a fair assumption to make. The switch flipping theory. But tonight was a great, they don't want to be 4, 2, 3. I'm sure they would rather be 1, but 4 is not the place you want to be. Because more than likely, how's it go? 1, they got that whole play-in thing. I forget how that goes. But yeah, you don't want to face that team that's got a ton of energy and a ton of momentum. They would rather be a little bit higher. 2 or 3. I feel like Denver's just going to secure that 1. Oklahoma City lost tonight. So it would have been really sweet to beat the T-Wolves and gain a game on both of those teams. I feel like Denver's pretty much going to lock in that 1 seed. I mean, anything's possible. And of course, it's not over yet. But when you have a lead against a good team, and then you just let it slip through your fingertips, and then you kind of scratch your way back a little bit. They did it with drawing fouls and going to the free throw line. They kept it within 4 to 6 points. I was like, all right, that's not the prettiest way of doing it. That's the old, battle it out, dig it out of the dirt scenario. But they were doing that. And I'm like, okay, cool. They're hanging around. It's a tiny bit of fight. Then they started playing ISO ball and turning it over. Like, what happened to the passing that was so pretty in the first quarter? They just seemed to do everything wrong in that third quarter. Live ball turnovers that Minnesota turned into points. It was just everything about it was wrong. Ugh. They were playing well until they weren't, is how it kind of felt. It's like everything was going well, and then all of a sudden, it's not going well anymore. So do we have any fight to get back in the game? Now, if they start out crappy and slowly build their way back and hang around at halftime, and then by the third quarter, they can flip the switch then. I'm comfortable with that. Although the first half will be frustrating, I'm comfortable with them flipping the switch after the break. Coaching staff does a good job with this team. But they don't appear to have the ability to get punched in the mouth and bounce off the ropes. They just don't. I don't know why. I mean, maybe Kawhi is their vocal leader, and the fact that he left and was hurt, they were just like, what the F? That sucks. Is he okay? Maybe it was a bigger impact to them than we think. I don't know. I just know that they're going to need to find some fight for the postseason. You can't blow 22-point leads against good teams. You just can't. And they did all of it. The other thing that's fascinating to me, it doesn't ever seem to happen to the Clippers, occasionally, but they blew that lead in like 5 minutes of game time. It almost seems impossible to give up a 22-point lead in 5 minutes of game time. It was a 20-2 run. Just holy cow. That's when you start drinking right then. All right, we'll take a break. We'll come back and we'll do the bucket list, which is abbreviated tonight because I just, out of protest, I'm not doing a number one. I refuse to do a number one. I'm going to give a player number one, and that player is not a Clipper. Thank you for joining us here on the Locked On Sports LA YouTube channel and listening on the Locked On Clippers podcast feed. Clippers Postcast, we come on right after the game every time there is a game. So check us out. The place to hang after every game is the Locked On Sports LA YouTube channel. Tonight's show brought to you in part by our friends at Nissan. There you go. Nissan. I'm a Nissan guy. I've had many Nissan cars. I love the Altima. Had two of them, and one of them, well, actually, probably both of them saved my life. Super safe cars. So if you're the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further, not quite to accident status, but you ever wonder what's around the next corner, what every adventure could be for you, our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. The 2024 Nissan Rogue is a perfect car for the city, and it's also great for the country, great escapes, road trips, etc. Has a class exclusive tech. The Google built-in is your always up-to-dating assistant to call on for almost anything. Gone are the days of connecting your phone. Google Assistant has Google Maps, Google Play Store, and they're all built right into a huge 12.3-inch screen. It never seems like the screen is big enough. But that one is huge. It is also a touchscreen, so that makes life very, very easy in the car there. The tech is superior in this Nissan Rogue. The 2024 is perfect for the mid-size crossover for your next adventure. You can fit the kids in there when they're going to sporting events, soccer, football, baseball, softball, volleyball, whatever it may be. That is perfect for that. But if you have more people, more kids, the Nissan Pathfinder is also a great option. It has room for up to 8 inexpensive cargo capacity and advanced availability of 4x4 capability if you're heading up to the snow or if you have a boat or a small trailer. With the 284 horsepower engine, it'll tow up to 6,000 pounds. Take the Nissan Rogue, the Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop nissanusa.com. All right, Clippers just stepping it. Wet the bed and left the barn door open all at the same time. 118-100 falling to the Timberwolves. An epidemic of sorts. The turnovers turning into points, turning into big runs by the opponent, which turns into losses. That is their number one sore thumb. That's on the whiteboard. The transition defense and the turnovers, right? Those are the things that this team has to improve on. Now, they don't have to be perfect, but they have to be way better than they were in that third quarter. That was just terrible. All right, let's get into tonight's bucket list. In at number 5, a Paul George dunk at the 3:51 mark of the first. It made it 25-10. This is when they were starting to just pull away. They were rolling at this point. Everything was looking good. They were firing on all cylinders. It forced a timeout. I always love that. So a big bucket there from Paul George to make it a 15-point advantage for the Clippers. And at number 4 on the bucket list, Coffee had an and one. It was a nice move in the paint, high off the glass. It falls at the 10:05 mark of the second. It made it 44-27. So still That's early in the second, but they still had a pretty comfortable lead at that point. For number 3 on the bucket list, a Paul George 3, had a hand in his face, elevated the ball, got it up over the defender, and banged it in for a three-pointer, 66-57. So at this point, it's a 9-point advantage with that 3. So the Timberwolves are starting to pull away at that point. The Clippers, I said, they kind of hung around. They kept it around 6 at the 10:25 mark of the fourth. Coffee hit a 3 where the Clippers just needed something, right? It was like the Timberwolves were going on a run. They were making it look too easy, and they needed something, and Coffee hit another 3. It made it a 6-point game, 89-83, 10:25, the fourth. But from there, it was all Timberwolves. More turnovers because it didn't last long. I believe there was a 3 hit shortly thereafter. I know points for sure. The Timberwolves just didn't give the Clippers any room to breathe offensively. I know that they're a great defensive team, top defense in the league, right? But today it was more about offense than it was defense. Mike Conley, I think, came down and hit a 3. And for tonight's bucket list, he's number 1 on the bucket list. He had 5 clutch threes, 5 of 8 in 27 minutes. He was 9 of 15 on the night for 23 points. Second to Anthony Edwards, the Ant-Man was once again fantastic. Only 2 threes for him, though, but he had 37 points going 15 of 29. A fantastic performance from that guy. He is just so good. Not surprisingly, we are very aware of that. They had a tough time stopping him, kept hitting clutch shots, did not give the Clippers any room to breathe when they were trying to scratch their way back into it. So there's not a lot you can do about that. I said, how do they get back into this game? I don't know. You got to stack stops, and they just couldn't do it because the Timberwolves are just too good at scoring with Anthony Edwards. Obviously, Cat was out. I believe Gobert left early with some issue. He fell on Zoo and landed hard and was holding his rib cage, so he left early. Clippers did not take advantage of that either. So, tonight was a ripe opportunity for the Clippers to win this game. Karl Anthony Towns is out, and they have other injuries. Alexander played tonight, but he was out recently. No, he had a big game. Who's the other guy that was out? Anderson, not Alexander. And Alexander had a big night off the bench, 9 of 10 for 28 points. He had 5 threes in just 28 minutes. So he was on fire as well. So that's what's great about this team. Similarly to the Clippers, they just have waves of scoring coming off the bench, and it's hard to deal with all of that deep activity, right? They can bury it from beyond the arc just like the Clippers can. So they just couldn't answer. And that's what they needed to do tonight. They needed to answer, kind of have a heavyweight fight from beyond the arc, and they just couldn't do it. James Harden, 2 of 6 from beyond the arc for 12 points. Terrence Mann had 1 3. Norman Powell had 1. Bones Highland had 2. They were late. They were well down at that point. Daniel Tice had 1. Paul George had 2. Those came early. The highlight of the night really for the Clippers was Paul George from the free throw line going 10 for 10. He led LA with 22 points. So they needed to be able to rally from beyond the arc, and they just couldn't. They needed to be able to stop the Timberwolves. They also had no ability to do that either. So these are common problems for them and things that they are going to have to improve on as they get to the postseason, because that's just not going to do it, right? They'll need, when you looked at what they were doing in the first quarter, first half of the game, they even said it on the TNT broadcast. They had all these graphics set up where the Clippers, they were displaying how the Clippers were just sharing the ball. Everybody was contributing, and that's what you really like to see from a team. It's not like one guy is carrying all the load. So that was working for them. Then they get to the third quarter. They start turning it over. They start playing sloppy. They forget how to play defense and transition, and it all just went to hell in a handbasket, right? Harden throwing the ball out of bounds. Zubac's throwing the ball out of bounds. There was just Too many damn turnovers once again. But the funny and interesting part about the turnover situation was I wrote the note down on the first, and then I circled it in the third. Too many turnovers in the first half as well, but it was only 6. But the problem with those 6 turnovers, I believe that Timberwolves turned almost all of them into points, right? You can't give up that many points off of turnovers. So they have to improve on that. And that's about effort. It's just like defense. Defense is about effort. Turnover. And Doc was reminding them in the huddle. I heard him say it because they had the mic in the huddle. Let's take care of the ball. But he was saying it kind of mildly. Let's take care of the ball. All right, guys, let's get out there. Go get them. Take care of the ball. You know, I want him screaming that. Take care of the ball. Or you're going to be running laps or fined in the swear jar or something. I don't know. I need to have more energy on the reminding of that the turnovers are an epidemic for them. They are a huge problem that they need to take care of because it is not going to go away if they are not working on taking care of the ball. I feel like it's doable, right? I mean, it's not such a big problem where they can't fix it. There's really those two things. They got to clean up the turnovers and they got to be better in the transition defense. Those are their two issues. When things start to go downhill for them, it's turnovers and transition defense, right? Or just defense in general, perimeter defense, slow down the opposition. They asked Terrence Mann at the end of the third quarter, how do you slow down Anthony Edwards? Well, we just got to get in front of him. You have to do a little bit more than just get in front of him, right? You're going to have to body him up. You're going to have to get physical. Just getting in front of him ain't going to cut it. All right. Tonight for the superlatives, number 1, the disappearing man routine. That credit would go to Ivica Zubac. Started out pretty well. Looked pretty good in the first and second quarters. Finished with 10 points. Not terrible, but that was 4 of 4 from the line. He was 3 of 5 from the field. 27 minutes. He did have 8 rebounds, but from an offensive standpoint, what he did in the first half and first quarter did not show up in the second half. He absolutely disappeared. I was going to give it to Bones Highland because Bones had 3 points until like the final few minutes of the game. So honorable mention for disappearing man routine was Bones Highland, but he did hit a couple of meaningless threes late in the fourth quarter. So he got 8 points on the night. Brandon Boston had 11 points in 9 minutes. No, I'm sorry. He had 2 points. That's Norman Powell. 11 points for Norman Powell. He was kind of a disappearing act as well. So when those guys are good, and Bones Highland's been really good filling in for Russell Westbrook. Norman Powell, obviously, he's usually an 18 to 24 point man. 11 points ain't going to cut it. Terrence Mann is usually always double figures. 7 points ain't going to cut it. James Harden, 12 points ain't going to cut it. 4 turnovers for James Harden. Oh, so the turnover machine award tonight goes to Paul George because he had 5, one more than Harden. And there was one more. There was 2 guys that had 4. Who's the other guy with 4? Maybe I'm wrong. Okay. So yeah, 4 for Harden and 5 for Paul George. Guess I saw that wrong, but 5 turnovers for Paul George. Too many. A couple of nights ago, I just kind of overlooked the fact that James Harden had 5 turnovers because I was trying to be positive. I was trying to not be so negative. That's too many turnovers. Too damn many turnovers. It has to stop. And lastly, for the superlatives, the best sustained defensive energy throughout the night, Terrence Mann. Played great on defense. Didn't score a ton of points, but he had 3 steals and he had the energy. He was battling. He was 3 of 6 from the floor, had a 3 in 28 minutes, finished with 7 points. Need more out of him on the offensive end, but he gave his all on defense. So for that, I give him credit. Clippers fall. They've now lost back-to-back games, losing to the Timberwolves, blowing a 22-point lead, 118-100 the final. They're now 41-23, 22-10 at home. Off tomorrow, back at it on Thursday, a 5:00 tip in Chicago at the United Center. I will see you immediately following the game So be ready for hopefully a win. We got to snap this 2-game losing streak. We've got to get back on track and start to focus in on the playoffs. I am Pete Fox. This is the LA Clippers postcast on the Locked On Sports LA YouTube channel, the place to hang out when every game is over. You can also check us out on the Locked On Clippers podcast feed. Have a good night. We will talk again on Thursday.